water from the Galadimawa axis is not controlled, there is no way. Meanwhile, FEMA, in a statement signed by its head of public affairs, Nkechi Issa, said no life was lost in the flood. Issa, however, said a total of 116 houses were submerged. Now, this statement also dismissed reports on social media that a resident in the estate went missing during the floods. We're working on getting a representative of FEMA, to come into the studio so that we can hear directly from them. But to have this conversation today with me, joining us is Mr. Olushola Babalola. He's the CEO, Center for Environmental Sustainability and Development Awareness. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me on the show.
Good afternoon, sir. So let's get into this conversation first. Let's know how you are feeling regarding this, happening, this unfortunate happening.
Okay, so it's very saddening that this issue of flooding, especially in Trademore Estate, has become a perennial issue, that it gives the entire residents a kind of headache whenever rain, starts. If I should cast your mind back, in the last 1, 2, 3 years, it has been a recurring issue. We have had a similar experience, in Abuja, where the entire estate and the environment is submerged, which caused a lot of damages, to structures and as well as people living in that, area. So I think by now we should be able to have gotten a lasting solution, to the problem. But it's quite unfortunate that to a very large extent, the agencies that are saddled with responsibility have not been able to live up much to their dealings and expectations in the society. So it's one issue that we continue to talk about. It's one issue that we continue to sensitize the entire public about. And it's one issue that we continue to call out, those that are responsible, for the proper care of that estate. So I will tell you categorically that it's one narrative that nobody in Nigeria, especially people in Abuja, will want to talk about.
Okay, so now, is it possible for you to provide an overview of the impacts that this current situation regarding flooding let's look at Nigeria as a whole now, right? The impact it has had on communities.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So, like every other part of Nigeria, what happened in Nube in Trademore Estate last Friday is not really different from what some other part of Nigeria has been experiencing, especially those that are located, communities that are located close to the riverine area. For example, Nube is located on the river channel, so you can see canals surrounding Nube. But presently, one would have expected that the owners of the estate should have carried out what I call the engineering remediation work, which would have probably ensured the expansion of gutters and probably demolition of buildings standing along the floodplains. But to a very large extent, this has not been done. I remember 2 years ago when we had a similar experience, they marked some houses that are built on the drainage ways, for demolition. But how much of that have they been able to do to curtail what we are having presently? Yes, whenever there is a flooding, it's an uncomfortable situation, to residents that where the flooding is prone to. So, for example, in your introduction, you talk about the fact that over hundreds of people are, affected. There's going to be relocation, and this is not a kind of relocation that you plan for. It's an emergency situation. All of a sudden, it just happened, people's houses were submerged, and before you know it, just like that person talked about the fact that thank God he was able to swim, he knew how to swim, because he watched the game, in that kind of a situation. Then again, what kind of mechanism is government put in place to ensure the safety of property, the safety of life of those people that are affected at that particular point in time. How prompt are they in terms of responding, to that issue, in terms of recovering lives, in terms of recovering property, at that particular point in time. So those are the kind of things that we need to, talk about. We all know the multiplying effect of that in negative, in the sense that there's going to be a lot of demolition, there's going to be a lot of afflictions in terms of, as we are speaking now, they have about 17 people in the hospital that are recovering from that shot, that are recovering from that damage to bodies, to buildings and what have you. We all know that whenever there's building, there's going to be loss of property, there's going to be loss of lives, and these are things we cannot really quantify in the actual sense of them. Multi-millions of naira, have been lost in the occurrence that happened last Friday in Abuja, and it's not limited to Abuja alone. It's happening all over Nigeria, in Lagos State, in Rivers State, in the far north, in Kebbi, for example. We've heard about issues of flooding in the last few weeks, in the last few months, and how prepared are you to ensure, that we mitigate well, the effect of flooding, in Nigeria. We shouldn't be talking about immediate remediation alone. What can we put in place to ensure that the flooding does not become a perennial issue? So yes, there are quite a lot of factors into it. The issue of climate change is one, big factor. Once there's an ocean surge, definitely, the water bodies will be looking for how, they can drain, the water bank, and in a way it will flow, back into the community. And the overbearing effect of that is that if adequate care of our drainage ways, are not taken into consideration, what we are seeing, now is going to be the effect of what is going to happen whenever there is flooding.
So now we have heard this is not the first time this is happening, especially in Treadmore. It has happened before. Can we say that this happenstance this sad happening was as a result of carelessness? And then carelessness on whose side?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the best words we can. I don't think there's any other word we can choose if it comes to the appropriate words, to use in describing what is actually happening. Because, like I said in my introductory message, I talk about the fact that those that are saddled with the responsibility of ensuring that proper infrastructures are put in place in estate need to be up and doing. So, what do I mean by that? For example, Abuja has a blueprint, a plan that everybody should follow. There are cadastral zones. There are business districts, there are places mapped out for estates, there are places mapped out for commercial purposes, and how much of this have we followed? Even in a certain area, places are mapped out for different infrastructures. For example, the drainage ways. We've seen where people are building on the drainage ways. And once you build on the drainage way, what that means is that whenever it rains, you are going to prevent the ease of movement of, water, of rain, of erosion, So, and the effect is that if the water cannot move smoothly, there's going to be a pushover. So definitely it's going to push, on whatever structure that is obstructing it from flowing. And at the end of the day, what we are writing, to is catastrophe. So how much of that have we done in terms of putting the right monitor and evaluation in place? One thing is to allocate plots of land, for estate developers. Another thing is for government to monitor the activities of this developer to ensure, that whatever they are putting on that plot reflects, the lay down plans of that particular area. So, like I told you 3 years ago, they map out some buildings, for demolition in this particular Treadmore estate that we are talking about. They map them out based on the fact that those structures are built on the drainage ways. You understand? Then again, we need to consider the population of that place. At inception, we have a few hundreds of people. Day in, day out, the population is bloating. So we can't use the same infrastructure that they are using in that particular estate 10 years ago in the realities. It's not going to work. And that's the reason why I said they need to come up with the engineering, remediation of that particular estate. Where they need to expand the waters, they need to do that. Where they need to demolish houses, that are built on the on the drainage ways, they need, to demolish those houses. And fourthly, they need to stop allocating land, sewage ways for people for construction of houses. Yeah, they need to be up and do. They need to carry out that supervisory role. They need to do that monitoring. They need to do that evaluation of the entire, estate. There are other auxiliary services that they need to provide. For example, they need to have a very good environmental plan in that place. With regards to refuse, collection, they need to have the central point of collection whereby all the refugees goes to. You understand what I'm trying to say? So that people don't just drop refuse indiscriminately, at the end of the day. These are part of the things that we really need to look into. And this is the reason why we need to call out the agency that are saddled with that responsibility, especially the Development Control Agency. They are saddled with that responsibility. They need to really know, what is going on in some of these estates. And they really need to plan well ahead of time. I remember prior to now, we try as much as possible to disseminate the NIMET report, the AFO report for 2023, that predicts what is actually happening now in terms of flooding. Places like Lube are, highlighted as one of the high priority flooding areas. In Abuja, Lube, Gwagwalada, part of the central area. So we should have looked into this report and see how we can mitigate, the pending flooding that we are having presently now, in the country.
Okay, so now you mentioned a few things like, authorities should stop selling lands to people that, places to people that are supposed to be drainage systems and sewage systems and all of that. And that's going to lead me to the next question. How do we advise people that are just moving into town or just trying to acquire property? How do you advise them? What do you look out for to know that, this is not a place that I'm supposed to be, investing my money in or settling in? Because, it's flood prone.
We are talking about estates now. I think our focus should be directed to the management of estates, the owners of estates, the investors. That they should try they should try as much as possible not to maximize their gain by not following the actual plan of the plots of land, that are allocated to them. Before you start a building, the first thing you do, is plan. I hope you agree with me on this. So it's going to be very difficult for an individual that actually wanted to buy a building in the estate to actually know the plan in the actual sense of it, of those buildings. Yes, chain buildings, multiple buildings were erected in a place and you see people living in that place. And especially if you come to visit that place during the dry season, everything will look well, it will look good until maybe when you move in and it rains about 2-3 different times, and if there are flooding, then you begin to really know in the real sense of it how that place look like. So I think there's little individual can do in terms of knowing whether houses are built on the sewage ways or not. So, but what I can advise is that it's always good to, probably get ample information about where you are moving into, the estate you want to, acquire a building in. For example, Abuja geographical system, where they can actually give you ample information about different zones, different areas in Abuja, for you to be able to know whether where you are moving to is a residential district or not. So, but again, the advice we can give households is that in terms of having a proper environmental plan in place with regards to management of refuse. One of the things you look out for is the environmental plan of that particular estate. So how central for the collection of refuse, for example, then what kind of other infrastructure they put in place in terms of road, in terms of drainage, then in terms of other auxiliary services that they're supposed to provide to ease, the movement of flood when it rains. So these are little things people can consider before they move into an estate. And they are duty bound to ask questions too, from existing residents of that place to really know the situation of things before they move into that place.
All right, thank you, sir. Now, we've been having a conversation right here for the past couple of minutes with the CEO, Center for Environmental Sustainability and Development Awareness, Mr. Olushola Babalola. If you do want to join the conversation, you could drop a WhatsApp message on 0700 010 961. 961. The phone number to drop a WhatsApp message on is 0700 010 961 961. Back to you, sir. What measures would we say in the past have the government been seen to have taken to address flooding and its impacts? Measures that we've seen them go through with.
Yeah, so if there's going to be an estate, for example, or there's going to be any structure put in place, the first thing they're supposed to do is to conduct environmental impact assessment of that place to really know the kind of, to really know the topography of that particular portion of land. For example, the Chedmore estate we are talking about is a riverine channel. You can see that there are canals almost around it. So what I'm trying to say in essence is that place is a riverine area. It's more or less, like a port that collected, water that are coming from the uppermost part, of the town to that particular, site. So the kind of provision that they are going to make in terms of erecting structure in that place should be different from places like a playing ground. You understand what I'm trying to say now?
Yes, sir.
Whereby you can, whatever they are going to put in place in that place should be double. For example, there's something they call DPC. You understand what I'm trying to say? This is dam-proof course. For example, if you want to build a house, you need to do a dam-proof, course to ensure that the structure does not sink. That is one. Then again, where they need to channel the water properly, where they need to put the appropriate canal, they need to put canal, before they even start building houses again. Then they need to put good drainage system in place, like I said earlier. And again, there are places that are mapped out, for other, for example, fire service came into that place. How accessible is the place, to fire service? How accessible is the place to NEMA in case of emergency? We wouldn't say because we want to maximize our profit, then where you're supposed to build, drainages or canal, you decide to erect a building there. Definitely, it's going to be catastrophic at the end of the day because once it's rain and the water cannot move, the next thing is to pull down, the structure. And at the end of the day, the adverse effect is that properties will be lost, life will be lost if care is not taken, then the issue will become a perennial issue. If they had, probably carry out a proper, re-engineering, of that place, what we are seeing now or what happened on Friday might probably not happen. Because if they have, demolished all those buildings put on the sewage ways, on the, water drainage ways, had been pulled down, it will be very easy for water to move. And at the end of the day, as it's raining, the water will drain quickly, from the estate. We will have averted, what we witnessed on Friday. But in as much as they are still cutting corners, they are not really doing what they're supposed to do, to make way for water or to probably channel that water to move away from that place. We continue to see what happened on Friday. So it's very, very important for the government authority to do their work. They need to go and carry out impact assessment of that place again to know exactly where there is need for a particular or a set of buildings to pave way for ease of movement of water, to do so. Because if they are not, up and doing and they are not alive, they have to close their eyes and do their job, irrespective of whose horse may go at now. So they just have to do that job so that they can, prevent what, presently we are experiencing in that particular thing. And this is not limited to Abuja alone, just like you said, all over Nigeria, in Lagos, even in Bodilon. Anytime it rains in Bodilon, you see the entire Bodilon, flooded, with water. And people have been coping with this. And the most interesting aspect of it is that when you consider the category of people that are living in Bodilon, these are the shakers and movers of the society. But again, they have not been able to tell the truth to the government. They have not been able to, take government or whoever agency that are serving with that responsibility accountable, to their stewardship. So we really need to do it. And that's why I said, where we need to call them out, we have to call them out. Then again, where we need to sensitize people, especially the public, the residents of those estates, we need to sensitize them. We need to let them know the implication of, that. There are other human factors to it, like indiscriminate disposal of waste, which is a contributory factor to this now. So, and that's why I said, how much of environmental plan do they have in that place, especially with regards to collection of refuse? Do they have a central point where they collect their refuse, or people are just, throwing their refuse indiscriminately, as they like? So these are part of things we really need to look into. And when we integrate all this, then we begin the process of profiling solution, to the problem. Until we look at this, there's supposed to be a total overall review of the estates, especially the trade mall and other areas that are prone to flooding, and come up, with a lasting solution, to that problem.
All right. So now, are there? How can communities and individuals prepare and respond effectively to flooding events?
Okay, yeah. So I think the first thing is to keep the environment clean. And how do you do this? You don't throw your refuse on the gutter. So that is one. Then two, where they need to plant trees. You remember in those days, they encourage us to plant trees. And we all know the effect of trees. When you plant trees, it makes the texture of the soil, solid. Then again, it's like a control from the wind too. Whenever it rains and there is heavy flooding, it comes with wind. So you can't take that away from it. So ordinarily, it's not only the water, the erosion that actually washes away the structures now or infrastructure. The wind contribute to that, as well. So where we need to plant trees, we need to encourage ourselves to plant trees. We need to encourage ourselves to channel, the water properly. And for those that are living close to the riverine area, you understand, they need to properly channel the water, through the river, so that when it rains, there will be ease of movement, of the water or the erosion. You understand? So these are little things, we need to do, as community, from our side as well. And we need to encourage ourselves. So you won't say because every other person are doing it, because it's very common all over Nigeria. Once it rains now, you see people bringing out their refuse and they are dumping it, on the drainage ways, which is very wrong. Because yes, it might move away from your own portion of the drainage way, but the truth is that it's going to stop somewhere. And if the water cannot flow again, what they are writing letter to is what is it called, catastrophe. So because the water will definitely force its way through, and whatever that is serving as a what is it called, a prevention from making the water to flow, will be, removed. It will be pulled down. So it's very, very important that we need to sensitize ourselves too about what we need to do well ahead of rain. Now that the rain is here, we need to refrain from all those illegal practices that people do embark upon, like I've said earlier.
What you just mentioned now was going to be my final question, but then let's just talk about it now that it has come up. What role can public awareness and education play in minimizing the impacts of flooding?
So, like I said, once you are aware that your activity or your ignorance can lead, to destruction of life and property. So maybe we should forgive people. Why? Because they might not really know the consequence of what they are doing. But the more people are aware of bad practices, the more they want to refrain from it. So, for example, if you let them know that you are throwing your debris on the waterways because it rains, you let them know that as you are doing it, somebody is doing it, far ahead of you too. So it might get to your place and stop, and at the end of the day, it will wreak havoc there. So that is one. Then again, I think it is time for the Abuja Environmental Protection Board to come out and embark on mass sensitization of people now that rain is here. So that people will know the implication of those bad practices that they embark upon. Then again, we need to encourage them to make their surroundings clean. You agree with me? Once your surrounding is not clean, like we said, then there is a problem. Then where they need to create drainages, where they need to clear off the drainages well ahead of rain, they need to do that. It's very, very important. Where they need to channel the water, properly, government needs to do that. Even at the level of community, where they need to come together, put the resources to do it, they shouldn't wait for government. They can equally complement what government is doing. Government has put infrastructure in places, in some places, maintenance is another thing. So all those gutters created by government, you don't expect government to come and be clearing it. It's for our own usefulness. So, and if you believe it's for our own usefulness, you should be able to clean up that particular portion in our communities. We shouldn't wait for government to do that for us. Because at the end of the day, if the attendant consequence comes, the people that will suffer it is not government. They are the residents and the people living in that community. So they need to have that understanding so that there will be paradigm shift in the way and manner they manage, the environment, in the way and manner they manage what is it called, the refuse in their area. And like I said earlier on too, we should encourage ourselves to plant trees. It has been found out that trees help a much in terms of controlling erosion, in terms of controlling wind. So this is very, very important as well. Then again, to other stakeholders, those governmental agencies, they need to live up to their duty. And one thing I think is lacking again is the political will, to enforce some of these rules. There are rules, there are penalties. So how much or how many of people have they punished in the last 1 year, in the last 2 years, in the last 3 years? So if you don't punish people, they always feel that they will do it and get away with it. So they really, really need to have that political will, to enforce, some of these environmental and sanitation law as well, so that it can serve as a deterrent to others that might want to do it in the future.
Thank you very much, sir. That was a lot of justice you did to that question right there. I would love to ask you if you're aware of any ongoing research or initiatives focused on flood management and prevention in Nigeria at the moment.
I cannot pin this down to a particular project, but I know there are quite a number of government agencies that are saddled with that responsibility. For example, Federal Ministry of Water Resources is one government agency that are neck deep in this. And I know there are synergies with Ministry of Environment, Federal Ministry of Environment, and other agencies like NEMA, that's Nigeria Emergency Management Agency. So also other relevant agencies like Abuja Environmental Protection Board. But again, some of these, what do they call them now? Some of these professional associations too, because we have associations like the Architecture Association of Nigeria, the Nigerian Science Society, Nigeria Engineering Society, NSC, Nigeria Society of Engineers, we have COREN, and we have Nigeria Association of Estate Management. These are professional bodies that are supposed to make input into what is actually going on. For example, we gave the approval of Trademore Estate. As professionals, they should be able to punish all those who that, go contrary to the laid down rules. Until they begin to do that, we might not be seeing much of progress in terms of managing our environmental situation in Nigeria. For example, as a doctor, if you hear they are going to seize your license, they are going to punish you appropriately. They are not even waiting for government. Before the government will, probably meet out their own punishment. I know the first thing they do as lawyers. If you do the wrong thing, NBA we always call their members, to order. So this is lacking in terms of engineering. I have not seen much of that. Remember what happened in Lagos 2 years ago? That edifice that just came down all of a sudden. Up to now, the last we heard about it is that they've created a commission of inquiry to look into it. 2 years down the lane, we have not seen a single person being penalized. So these are part of the things that are contributing to the fact that people will keep doing the wrong thing, and at the end of the day, once they know that they can always, bribe their way, they will continue doing it, without being punished. So that's why I talk about the fact that the government agencies that are serving within responsibility need, to be up and doing, and they need that political will to be able to enforce, all these laws. And until we begin to do that, we might not see much of progress in that. Yes, I know there are individual organizations that are doing, in our universities, that are doing research into that, but the major problem is the funding. The research funding is not really there. So you might not really see academic institutions, you might not really see bodies, doing much of research into how this could be curtailed in our country. So until we consider an investment into funding researches on flooding and some of the antecedent consequences, might not see much of progress in that area.
Okay, so we have just about 5 minutes to wrap up on the show, and this has been a very interesting discourse, I must say. Just before we leave the studio, can you tell us about you yourself? You are the CEO of the Center for Environmental Sustainability and Development Awareness. Let's know a little bit about what your organization does.
Okay, so Center for Environmental Sustainability and Development Awareness is a civil society organization, a Nigerian advocacy group that is serving the responsibility of ensuring natural resources, especially in the area of environment, forest, and we delve into the area of climate education as well. We did WASH is water, sanitation, and hygiene, and we have done quite a lot of community-based engagement, inclusive engagement in Abuja and other parts of the country. For example, we have put up a very serious campaign, against indiscriminate disposal of waste. We put up a very strong campaign against open defecation, and we have worked towards making access to improve water access in Nigeria a priority, as well. Just of recent, we are working across the 6 area council in Abuja, where we are looking at how we can bring about a proper WASH, practices, in the 6 area council. We put up a very strong sensitization, gathering, doing outreaches in communities, markets, motor parks, educating them why they need to keep a very clean environment, why they need to keep, to some of these environmental law, the implication to the society if they fail to do that. And again, we've moved to school as well, try to catch them young. So what we are trying to do is to inculcate, these, what is it called, practice of good sanitation, and we believe in the veritability of school as a platform that can actually help to further propagate what we are doing. Because when you train a particular person, you have trained, an household. And when you train an household, you have trained a community. When you train a community, you have trained a society. And when you train a society, you have trained the entire nation. So we believe that whatever education, whatever information that we give to the students, they take it back home, they share it among their family members, their siblings, their parents, and before you know it, it will trickle down, to the community, and from community to the larger society. And before we know it, we can get rid of, some of these environmental issues that are presently confronting us in Nigeria. So these are the areas, we have worked on. And then again, in the area of climate change, we have tried to let people know, because as we are speaking, some people will still tell you there's nothing like climate change. But we have given climate education to people, and we have spoken, in different, forums, why we need to prioritize the issue of climate change in Nigeria, because some of the contributing factors, like I told you, because of this ocean surge, the ripple effect of ocean surge is part of what we are seeing happening in terms of flooding too. So we have come up with probable solutions as to suggestions and recommendations as to how the issue of climate change can be properly managed in our country. So it's just a message of no one is left behind. So if the entire world is embracing it, you see no reason why Nigeria should be left behind. Trying to engage policies, review policies, and see the kind of policies that we have, so that such policies can actually fit into the present day realities as to proper management of our environment, as to giving the proper climate education, as to how we can improve access to water, sanitation, and hygiene in Nigeria. So these and other things that we may not be able to mention here due to time factor are some of the things that we are doing, at the level of CESDA.
Well, thank you very much, sir. This has been a very, very educative and informative session. Thank you very much. You have done justice to the subject, and we appreciate you taking out your time to join us having the conversation.
Thank you once again for having me on your show.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And of course, in conclusion, I'd love to say that understanding the impacts and solutions for flooding in Nigeria is crucial for safeguarding communities. By recognizing the factors contributing to flooding, implementing sustainable measures, and fostering public awareness, we can mitigate the devastating effects on infrastructure, agriculture, and even lives. It is imperative that the government, researchers, and individuals work together to develop innovative strategies and preparedness plans. Through effective and collective efforts, we can navigate the dulge and create a safer, more resilient Nigeria for future generations. It is your Nigeria, it is my Nigeria. If everybody does his part, I'm sure we might not have to deal with these issues as often or as badly as we do. I'm Chinwe Blessing. Of course, Matters continues with In the Streets shortly. Stay with us.
People, can I have your attention, please? You say, tell us the news. And now, here it is.
Voice of the People, 96.1 FM.
Now,
you have a voice.